So a few people have asked me how to make louvered shutters like this, and because I have the perfect tool for it, the pantorouter, I thought I'd make a video on how to make one of these. So normally with a pantorouter, to make a mortise with a bit, I just run the guide bearing back and forth along a horizontal track, and that'll trace a horizontal path with a router. But for the louvers, I want this track at an angle, so all I really have to do is create a template on here that runs at an angle, and then the router will follow the same kind of angle. I started out by working out the layout for my louvers in SketchUp, and then I took that shape and rotated it horizontal and scaled it up 2 times because the pantorouter needs a template twice the size, and then I used that to draw the template that I was actually going to follow with a router bit. Next I hit the print screen key to get that image into the clipboard, then start big print and import the image, and now I just need to crop off the rest of the window, set the scale according to a known distance, and turn on grids, and then send that off to the printer. So the reason I drew a double line here is because I always ended up going a little bit past the line. So now I'm cutting to the first line, and it's a bit messy, and then I'll use a file to bring it to the second line. Now I'm ready to mount this template on my pantorouter, and I made a couple of blocks to hold this template a little bit forward because it's a bit too thin to reach this ball bearing. But the tricky part is how high to mount this. So this line on here, I did this on my CAD drawing, that represents the edge of the wood. So if the bit of the router is resting on the table, that means the bearing has to be right up against this edge. Except I can't really test that with the thing on here because the bearing actually hits this piece. But I know there's 19 millimeters from here to here, so I'm just going to set my caliper to 19 millimeters and bring the cutter head over here. Bring it forward, rest the bit on the table, and now I can just measure to adjust this little block here so that the ledge on the block is exactly 19 millimeters below the bearing. And that will support the template in the right place. So my template has got just 6 slots on it, so now I need to move that so that that last slot is here. And to get the spacing right, I'm just going to put the router in the last slot here and just line that hole up with a bit. There we go. Now for the rail that faces this one, it has to be a mirror image, so effectively these slots have to go the other way. So I could make another template, but the way I made this template is I can just take that and flip it around, and now I have them going the other way. I just need to sand those a little bit now. Now I just need to make some slots for those holes, and I'll cut those on the table saw. So here's one of my slats, and it's going to fit into these slots. Now I need to round these corners here, and I could use an OG bit which has got just the right radius in here, and I'd need 2 passes on each side. A better option would be to use a bit like this that does both sides, but this one's the wrong size and I don't want to buy another one. But I've got this fancy bit that I've never actually used, and it's got just the right radius on here, so this is the one I'll use. So there's this spike sticking forward of the fence of this bit, as well as quite a bit here. So I was afraid that I might catch myself on it and injure myself. So I made this hold down, which sort of acts like a feather board. There's a slot down here. So this acts a bit like a spring, and that comes forward of the fence. So I'd really kind of have to reach way in there to get cut by the router bit. Well, the slots fit a little bit tight in the slots. So I'm going to taper all of these to make them easier to get in there. Now this is where it gets tricky. So after a few experiments, I found it's best to try to put these in one at a time, starting from one end and clamping it so that this doesn't pop out again, and just work my way towards the other end. Now, because these all fit very tight, I'm going to have to clamp this end as well, just to overcome all the friction. And that holds together pretty well just by friction. Now this is just a test assembly. I still want to put some rails in here. And I was originally figuring on just mortising them in here. But given how difficult this thing is to assemble, I'm going to make that mortise open on this end so I can slide it in like that. So here's my tenons cut, and that I can slide in from the bottom once I got this whole thing assembled. Now before I finish it up, I'm going to put a bead on here, and I'm going to tilt a Roman OG bit on my tilting rudder lift to get that curve. So I didn't glue any of the slats because this is tricky enough to put together on its own. Although if I did glue the slats, that would make it really strong because each of those is like a mortise and tenon joint. Well, all done now. So why did I build this thing? Just to show off how to make one of these things, because I have the perfect tool for it, the pantorouter. And all it takes is a clever little template like this, and I'll include the CAD drawing and a printable PDF for it on my website.